Hi everyone, and welcome to this webinar by Perfecto. Today's webinar is going to be around fast data, fast delivery, and how smart analysis can accelerate your application testing, whether it's web or mobile or anything. Just before we start, few housekeeping information. So this webinar is obviously recorded. Everyone who is registered will get the recording, as well as the slide deck. The slide deck are already available in the resources folder, so you can feel free to get them from there. We also have a Q&A panel, so feel free during the webinar and also after the webinar to interact with us and ask us any questions that you might have. With that, I want to start this webinar. My name is Eran Kinsbruner. I'm Chief Evangelist and author at Perfecto, blogger with nearly 20 years in development and testing. With me, I have Tzvika Shahaf. Hi, Tzvika.
Hi, Eran. Hello, everyone. Great to be here today. Thanks for having me. I'm leading the product team at Perfecto. I've been working with digital enterprises in the last couple of years, trying to help them optimize their continuous testing strategy, deliver faster, and ship better code, stable code faster. That's what we're gonna chat about today from the visibility perspective. I was fortunate enough to be part of the team that designed the visibility solutions for Perfecto's customers and how really fast feedback can improve the overall DevOps maturity and support the continuous testing, and we'll try to share some of these insights in today's session.
Thank you, Tzvika. Great to have you here, and I'm sure that, especially in today's digital transformation and new reality that everyone is living, quality visibility is getting definitely a higher priority than ever before, and we'll explain about that really soon during the webinar. So in today's webinar, we are going to touch the following things. We're going to definitely justify why smarter reporting and analysis are so critical for digital quality and business success. We're going to talk about when you have good reporting, how can efficient analysis can help you move faster, because just having the reporting without the ability to use it in the right way obviously lacks all the benefits that you can gain from such a solution. We're going to touch a bit about the key pillars that we believe are essential for a reporting solution. These are the things that Tzvika took part and designed for the Perfecto solution. And we're going to wrap up this webinar with a live demo showing a lot of these key features such as failure analysis, heat maps, and many more that can really help you drive more value from your entire testing activities. So let's start with a recap about the Agile Testing Manifesto and the DevOps Manifesto. And I just want to emphasize, there are a lot of words in this slide, and some of them are in bold, but I actually want to specifically, because of the context of this webinar, to touch the third bullet, which is testing that gives value, okay? What does value mean from a testing perspective, and how do you determine test value? And Tzvika, from a reporting perspective, why reporting really attaches itself to test value?
So if you divide around, the four main areas of testing, which include usually the creation component, the lab component, the execution component, and of course the analysis. The analysis of the reporting side is where you actually understand what is the achieved value of your testing, whether tests are stable or not, whether you're able to detect issues early enough in the process as a byproduct of testing. And this is really kind of the bottom line. You get a very clear feedback whether you're on track with your latest release or not. And that's, pure value question, as you just mentioned in the Agile Testing Manifesto.
Definitely. And, if you look at the title of this slide, you talked about Agile testing. Agile testing means you're testing at almost any code change, any code commit, and in most cases, when it's done right, the trigger is actually done through CI, which means you are really blind during the execution time. You don't really see what's happening. Only once you go to the report at the end of the execution to understand whether the test cases really delivered value, were able to identify defects and regressions, or they were just adding more noise to the developers and testers. So that's definitely why, this bullet is so important, and why this bullet really attaches itself to efficient reporting and quality visibility. But when you also talk about agile testing, you're also looking at a full team that works together, whether it's dev, QA, or SDETs, and non-functional testers, API testers, and many others. And why is that important? And we'll show it also during the demo. When you have a large team or a feature team that is working together, that consists of so many different personas, and each and every persona is contributing a different testing type, whether it's unit testing and API testing coming from the developers, functional testing written in Selenium or Appium or whatever, coming from the SDETs, and other test cases coming from, maybe even external teams, such as accessibility testing. You really want to be able to own, control, manage, and make sense out of all this test data, because in today's reality, it comes from multiple personas. It's not just a QA which uses a single dashboard for functional testing. You need to really have full quality visibility throughout the entire team. But, and Tzvika, this is exactly what we are seeing, that, when you involve so many personas and everyone is trying to contribute as much as he can to the DevOps quality processes, it doesn't really play well. Do you want to explain about this slide a bit?
Yeah, sure. So it's all about the matter of, turning testing, from a liability to something that provides value. And as you can see here, part of the crunch that happens today in the way that testing is implemented in the overall DevOps process is that testing happens by the end of the cycle. When the sprint ends, then some of the manual portion of the testing starts. That means that, throughout the sprint where developers are checking out their code, are merging significant pieces of code into their master or advanced branches, it means that there is no quality gate that actually verify that the code is stable, that it doesn't break the overall build. And it leads to a situation where the feedback gets too little, too late, if you like. And the negative consequences of that is, one, we have an extension for the sprint instead of kind of embedding the testing within the sprint itself. For each and every pull request or significant branching activity, we should see some kind of testing associated with that and not at the end of the cycle. So we have, as you can see below, an extension of 1 to 3 weeks in some cases, where organizations call it stabilization phase or QA phase or verification phase instead of running that within the cycle. The second issue is that when the feedback comes, in many cases, the project itself is already being pushed to production, and as part of that, we see defects or bugs that are escaping to the later stages, and in some cases, even to production.
Definitely, Tzvika, and I think that, if you want to flip this slide to, how good looks like, this is exactly the definition of automation that works across the different stages of the pipeline with test cases that brings you value. And if you've read the book that myself together with Tzvika wrote about continuous testing for DevOps, that's exactly the definition of continuous testing. You really want to have a continuous testing process that really eliminates all these bottlenecks by honing on the right test cases in the right phases during the cycle, and we're going to touch about that during this webinar. So you really unveil issues in an automated fashion, and as mentioned by Tzvika, you're not creating testing as a liability, but in the other words, you are really adding value continuously. But it's not just about visibility and quality reporting dashboards. Today's reality, unfolding the previous slide, suffers from many, many challenges. Some of them are related to automation skill set. Some of them are process oriented. Testing is done still in a different silo, in a different, process or phase. In the previous slide, we showed you that, only manual testing starts at the end of the cycle. Developers are just throwing code to the testers whenever they want. There is no really good planning and synchronization between the teams. The ability or the inability to create automation scenarios that are more advanced than the trivial ones, and today's apps really require the ability to script for advanced scenarios. Setting up test environments, okay? Perfecto is providing a cloud. One of the benefits behind the cloud is simply to, uncover and remove these obstacles of setting up a test environment, whether it's mobile, web, with location mimicking and all these things. These are taking a lot of time. These are causing noise and flakiness. So these are among the key challenges that we are seeing. Specifically in today's webinar, we are going to touch on this challenge. It's not the only one, but in today's webinar, we are going to really look at how much time is being spent by teams, whether they are developers, testers, or both, that, at the end of the execution spends, and I've been hearing 72 hours per regression cycles. I've been hearing even more, but this is a huge bottleneck. Even if you automated things enough, if you spend 3 days or more just to analyze the reports before providing back the feedback to the developers, it's way too much to spend on quality analysis. You really need to have fast feedback. Otherwise, you are really missing the value of testing. There are other challenges here. And by the way, some of these challenges, you see the arrows, are the root cause of other challenges or problems. For example, if you do not have a good automation skill set and you cannot automate everything that you want, obviously you will have escape defects that are slipping to production and stuff like that. Any comment on this slide, Tzvika?
Yeah, I would focus on one area, which is the bottom left side. Just to mention maybe a word about noise. So again, noise is something that is created from either flaky test cases, instability of environment, and other issues that cause, I would say, those false negatives that we don't understand what are the kind of the root cause for those. But in today's reality, digital enterprises are required to go through each and every failure that is being marked in the report. That process alone, usually a manual process, takes very long time. If we look at an average organization, and that would be maybe a great segue also to the next slide, Eran, is that we see that the amount of true failures is relatively low. If we take an example of a customer that, I've talked with like last week, would say, out of 100 failures overnight, I would probably open 1, maybe 2 tickets in Jira for the dev team. The rest is created from other reasons that I kind of find hard today to mark. So what we've done in Perfecto in the last couple of years is to analyze billions of test executions and try to create buckets or the main reasons that we see today for failures. If you'll take the first bucket, which is cryptic related issues, majority of the failures that we see today in test automation happens due to, I would say, limited handling or complicated handling of objects, the inability to identify an object, the use of a specific identifier in some cases, or locators that are too simple and are not sustainable, create that notion of the test flakiness that we all know. Other coding related issues, timeouts that are not being handled properly. These together alone take, I would say, the vast majority of failures that we see today in the market. Given the fact that we're not working in a vacuum and backend are, integration or backend interaction is key, either from a network or test data management and other aspect, the availability of the backend, that becomes another significant blocker for automation, especially for organizations that are trying to handle their own internal kind of DIY device lab or desktop web browser lab. There are stability issues, configuration issues, devices that tend to get locked or disconnected from network, and other reasons that, again, related to the lab itself. And of course, the orchestration. As I've mentioned, we're not working in a vacuum. There are other users in the organization that use the system. So in many cases, the user will try to hit a device that is already in use by other users in the org, or device that were disconnected are still kind of called via capabilities in the script, limited amount of licenses when it comes to cloud solutions, and others. So orchestration is also the key. As you can see, these are all reasons that have nothing to do with the functional failure of the application or the test that measures the functionality of the app. These are all items that can be categorized as that noise, as things that are not really tied to the way that the application should behave. And I think the biggest challenge in today's reality is how can we filter or remove that noise and make it easier and faster for the user to find that needle in the haystack, or as we treat it, we actually say that the haystack find the needle, and we can isolate the true, I would say, functional failures that should be highlighted or reported back to dev.
This is a great, I think, slide that moves us soon to the best practices. Just one word about this slide. So as Tzvika mentioned, none of these issues here represent any code defects or application defects. This is all pure noise, and pure noise means lack of value that you are getting back from your testing investment. So whenever you are able to see, and you see the 4 questions here, whenever you are able to determine what's wrong with your scripts, backend, lab, and executions, this is where you can really reduce the level of noise and obviously maximize the value that you can get back from your testing. And last point, since we are talking here about agile testing, continuous testing, it's not only good to do it like every week, or you need to have this visibility on a daily basis, because things changes both on your testing side and in the application. So you need to be able to have this visibility and address these 4 questions at any given time on demand. With that, let's move to the real life. We talked about noise, but let's see it in action, what we see in Perfecto's cloud, and how you can really take some corrective actions and enhance your value that you can get back from your testing activities. So first and foremost, and Perfecto allows you to do it, you can use other tagging solutions in the market, or build your own, but from our perspective, it takes a lot of time. One of the recommendations is to have some kind of a category or label to the failure reason. Okay, there can be the common things, and we have shown you in the previous slide, element not found, device disconnection, network disconnection. You can think about many other things like authentication issues and stuff like that, but you can also build your own failure reasons that are very specific to your business cases, to your application, as advanced as you can think of. There really is no limit to the failure reason that you can create. But at the end of the day, the value behind these is that when you go back to your reporting and you can slice and dice and filter based on failure reason, it's very easy for you to really, take decisions that are related to quality, and B, to really address the issues, without really blaming anyone. But, if you see a bucket of invalid XPath or element was not found, who should be handling this Jira ticket or whatever system that you're going to classify this noise. But it gives you a very good and managed system to filter noise. Any more comments on that points or slide, Tzvika?
Just, one of the reasons that it's so easy and customizable is given the fact that failure naming convention in each and every organization is a little bit different. The ability to create those buckets and associate specific failures to the known or to the formal failure reasons within the org is just a matter of flexibility, and we see organizations that are adding dozens of those reasons to be able to create a more in-depth or more granular level of defining the failures, if you like.
Definitely, Tzvika. So what we have done in the next few slides, myself and Tzvika, we have collected from real-life examples in our different clouds, some pitfalls, some issues that we are seeing as recurring. You have seen the slide earlier that shows about what's wrong with my scripts, execution, stuff like that. So it's not just theoretical. We actually went into the cloud, looked at real executions, and looked at some examples. And we are going to try and recommend you some practices so you can really avoid experiencing that on your end. So the first one is around capability not supported, okay? What does that mean? If you are using Selenium or Appium and you're trying definitely to define a specific platform, and it can be a platform, it can be a platform with other characteristics, can be a screen resolution, can be a location, can be, in other cases, a different environment condition, can be real device versus virtual device, can be many things. Selenium provides you a lot of desired capabilities, optionality, but if you're not really setting it up correctly, if you're not setting your desired capabilities properly, by the way, without such a report, you won't even know what happened. You'll just get an error, which doesn't mean anything. What we have seen in Perfecto, due to our different failure root analysis capabilities, is that we are actually able to classify capabilities that aren't supported. Can be a platform that is totally not supported, which doesn't exist. Some can be attributed to spelling issues that someone misspelled specific capabilities. Keep in mind that Selenium is now moving to a W3C standards, which means that some of the desired capabilities are going to change. So if you are running a Selenium 4, in a Selenium 4 environment, you might see also things like that. So this is one thing that we are capturing and obviously recommending you to ensure that you are properly setting the WebDriver desired capabilities, and obviously you are running against a supported configuration. The second example, I think, Tzvika, this is your favorite, no? Element not found.
Yeah. So again, one of the most common cases where object handling, as I've mentioned before, is the leading issue or the most common failure that we still see in the market. The way that objects are being handled in the script, definition of either XPath or use of ID, in many cases is not sustainable properly. We highlight the commands that are tied to failure of inappropriate handling of the element. There are sub cases to the general element not found issue. Some of them are tied to timer exceptions where the object is not being displayed properly on screen. But it's very easy to detect those and mark them and help users understand that this issue really is tied to a testing related issue.
Definitely. And Tzvika, what kind of bothered me when I was taking this screenshot was that in this specific test that is trying to click on the About option on the website, you see that on this Windows configuration, Windows 10 with Chrome 74, this test actually didn't pass for like 5 times in a row, okay? So if this is the point here, if a test continuously fails because of an element not found, you need to really make sure that you are debugging it. You're not really, recurringly adding noise to your pipeline. In the past we were talking about 3 strikes out. You can call it whatever you like, but if you have 2 or 3 times in a row a test that fails from the same reason, you really need to exclude it from the regression cycle or whatever cycle that you are doing. Make sure that you are debugging it properly, addressing this element not found issue, and only after you are very certain that it passes across multiple platforms, return it back to the pipeline. Otherwise, this is really not just that this test is not really adding you any value, it might be actually hiding a real defect because this test is not really running until completion. So you might be losing here some very important feedback from this test. So it's not just about the noise, it's also about the business implications here. The next thing that we have seen, and by the way, it can be both if you're using a DIY lab that Tzvika mentioned earlier or in the cloud, you really need to also make sure that you are orchestrating. This goes to the bucket of orchestration. If you recall the slide that Tzvika went over, you need to make sure that you are targeting a specific device or a device type that actually exists in the cloud, and to avoid devices that are in use, try to make the query for this device a bit not make it like a static one or a hard-coded device ID in that regards. Make sure that you are searching for, any Samsung or any, in this case, we're looking for a Galaxy Note 10. Make sure that you're looking for any Samsung that is available in the cloud. This will obviously reduce the chances of you running into specific issues. When you're doing it in your own on-premise, you really do not have this ability to do this seek and search and find for a specific device, but definitely, this race condition for platforms during execution stage, this is definitely something that we are seeing a lot, and there are ways to handle that. This is, again, I think, in my mind, one of the most important things in test reporting, in the modern test reporting, and I'm sure that Tzvika would agree with me. And I think that, using failure reasons, failure root cause analysis, using tags as part of your overall test development processes really pays itself back in the analysis of the reports through test impact analysis. Because at the end of the day, what do we care about from the test reporting perspective? We care about getting value. Value means, do we have any major issues with the feature, with the product, or we don't? That's the basic question that we are trying to answer with testing. And if we get a bunch of information from the test reports, like, against these specific devices, against these specific features, we receive this and these results. It gives us data that based on that, we can scope the next cycle, okay? We can focus on specific features. We can focus on specific platforms for our next iteration of software. Without having this visibility, without the knowledge, without the slicing and dicing, we are not really implementing any test impact analysis. We're just, running tests, getting results back, and we're kind of blind to the entire picture. So in my mind, when you are implementing reports with tagging mechanism and failure root cause analysis, like we showed you in the previous slides, you're really actually, by definition, implementing a test impact analysis abilities for the entire management to take good decisions. Tzvika, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, so again, honing in on specific problem, is a matter of the right slicing and dicing, as Eran said. The ability or the more in-depth the contextual aspect of the test is, the easier or the faster we will be able to isolate either a specific test case that is not stable, either a platform that is not stable, either a specific functionality, and so on. So we see customers today that are leveraging with Perfecto even dozens of tags for each and every test cases, from the name of the test owner through the name of the team, the suite, the project version. We support even custom fields that can add any key value to a test case, just to add any naming convention that is being used in the org. And that becomes really a key for a very fast triaging process.
Definitely, Tzvika, and I think the next two slides, we were unsure if to include them, but after looking at real-life issues, we decided that it's quite important to take this, I would say, case study of real devices versus virtual devices and connect it into the test reporting and analysis. And the reason we decided to do it is because, especially on the mobile side, when you are running dozens of test cases, can be unit test cases, integration, you all know about the test pyramid. But when you are running so many test cases in different phases of your software iteration cycles, you are using or leveraging different types of platforms, right? In the early stages, you are obviously using the simulators and emulators. But when you are moving up towards the integration testing and also right towards production, you're starting to either mix between virtual and real devices, or obviously when you are towards the UI test cases, the regression cycles, and the production monitoring activities, you are only using real devices. This is where you really want to have good quality visibility to filter out noise that is either related to the environment, whether it's a real device problem or a virtual one, or specifically if it's a real defect. It's not a noise, it's a real defect, and you want to be able to debug it against the different platforms. You want to have all the data available for you to understand where the issue is coming from, whether it's from the code itself, and this is kind of something that you might be able to see on a virtual platform, or it's a device-specific issue, and we will soon show you how real device issues are becoming reality today. You want to really see the logs and the information coming from the real devices. So in the next slide, we've collected, and you see that it's quite recent from the App Store through App Annie. We have seen specific device issues, on the LG G7 with Sirius XM, on the new Amazon rebranded application. We've seen that iOS 13.4.1 has issues. On Best Buy, on Xiaomi Mi A1, also real device issues. The Samsung S10 has issues with the Best Buy application. Without really having good quality visibility with logs, vital information, screenshots, HAR files, all these assets that a good reporting environment gives you, you're not really able to reduce the mean time to resolution. You're not really able to zoom in to the issues and determine whether this is a generic coding issues or it's a specific issue with the Best Buy application, for example, on these two devices. Okay? I think that, Tzvika, you are seeing that specifically this month, working with so many customers using the virtual platforms. Have you seen similar things?
Yeah, so while virtual devices are really powerful in terms of, spinning up an environment early in the process and try to compensate on what we just started with today's session, the ability to test earlier and to get fast feedback earlier. While the virtual devices are pretty powerful in terms of the integration test, the smoke test, if you like, when we get into real coverage issue, there is no replacement for the real devices. So the ability to reproduce everything with virtual devices is definitely not there. We know that starting from the chipset and the way that virtual devices are being architectured, they're not behaving as full real devices. So it's kind of a combo of the two, if you like, as you mentioned in your previous slide, around the ability to run on both in different stages of the software development lifecycle and get an instant feedback for each and every activity. If you are able to slice the data based on a platform basis, device type, operating system, and many other things, you will be able to find these things early enough and avoid situation where your customers are running some of the quality assurance activities as we see in these examples.
Definitely, Tzvika. And if going back to the test pyramid that we have shown you earlier, assuming you would be running the production monitoring or the final UI test cases on a virtual platform, obviously you would not be able to catch these unique, specific device issues, that escape to production at the end of the day. So this is why this combo definitely gives you a lot of benefits. But also the reporting on top of these platforms and this environment with all the artifacts gives you the real debugging capabilities to reduce the time from the moment you find this issue. So let's look at, what are the pillars, just before we are going to the demo, what are the pillars that Perfecto believes are necessary for an effective test reporting and analysis. And before diving to them, I want to explain, with the help of Tzvika also, how a good pipeline, looks like and how reporting kind of relates to this pipeline. So what you see in this slide is, I would say, an advanced pipeline process from one of our clients, one of our customers. And what you can see is that in different stages of the development cycle, multiple times a day, by the way, the client is running a set of different test scenarios, okay? Upon each pull request, and in this case, this client is doing up to 7 concurrent pull requests a day. He is running some kind of a smoke test cases. The smoke can be unit testing. Maybe it can be a mix of unit testing with some security or other API testing, which is fair. But think about the time window that this client is operating in. In this time window, he has 10 minutes of feedback, okay? So it's not just about running the test cases in these 10 minutes. He also wants to obtain the feedback that he can get from this cycle all in 10 minutes. It means that upon the execution end, he needs to get really actionable feedback from any test cases that were executed in the smoke cycle. Once a day, during a noon build, he's executing a 1-hour feedback cycle, which includes much more scope. Obviously, in an hour, you can execute a mix of functional testing, API, and the integration component, maybe security testing. And these test cases can be executed on both. If it's a mobile application, you can include, this is the mix that Tzvika was talking about, you can include virtual devices, real devices, and other environment conditions. But you have 1 hour to get the feedback, and here the scope is even bigger than in this 10 minutes feedback. So again, the requirements here are growing. You need to continuously provide value from the test cases in a short amount of time with a growing amount of test cases. And then you go to the nightly regression cycle, which includes, even more or sometimes double the test cases that you can think of. And here you want to make sure that you, again, get all the right feedback and evidence. So in the morning or upon the execution complete, you get the good value. By the way, the fact that this client is running, 2 cycles upon, pull requests and other noon builds and stuff like that, obviously brings greater confidence towards the nightly cycle, the nightly regression, because you already obtained some good feedback up until the decision to run the cycle. Maybe upon the 1 hour feedback in the noon, he had identified some issues which might cause him to delay or not execute the regression cycle because he found a showstopper bug or a very critical one. So this is a very efficient process, efficient workflow, but also a flow that can be maximized from a value perspective when you have good reporting behind the scenes. Any comments on this slide, Tzvika?
Yeah, it's really an art to be able to build that process where we start and establish a quality gate early enough, which is fast, is flexible enough, and then that we can really create the in-depth kind of coverage or the broader coverage that we're looking to achieve, closer to the market, closer to the user, closer to the real end kind of user conditions that we're looking to simulate and test against to make sure that our app or our service is bulletproof and is aligned with all the use cases or the footprint in terms of usage that we see. The combo of virtual and real becomes key here, and per each and every cycle in this process, visibility is the key, is really the ability to run faster, to get the required feedback, fix whatever we need to fix fast, and move on.
Definitely. So let's move to the actual solution. And, Tzvika, you are the mind behind that key pillars or features of the reporting. So this is what we believe in Perfecto are the key features, pillars of a good reporting and analysis solution. We want to quickly run through them. We're definitely going to see a live demo of each and every one of them, but just a high-level overview of these features.
Sure. So the activity starts from CI. CI is the logic generator that we all see in today continuous testing activity. So CI should be the entry level in terms of getting the visibility for each and every entity within the CI CD pipeline. So each and every job, each and every branch should be represented and easily kind of filter against. The rich set of artifacts becomes an issue for debugging purposes, including videos, screenshots, different type of logs from the device or execution logs, the crash logs, the network files, the HAR files, everything that is tied to that is an issue. The ability to visually validate that elements appear or display on screen, specific textual element, and the ability to set different checkpoints for that is also key. We see among our customers, variety of use cases where those dashboards are being displayed on TV screens for the team or being monitored by specific stakeholders within the team. One of the favorite one is the heat map and the ability really to break down and slice and dice the data in almost any possible way based on those tags that Eran mentioned earlier and other attributes that help you really build your own dashboard that makes sense to you. Everything is consumable via APIs or available for download through the UI. Of course, the classic integrations with Jira, with Slack, with Jenkins, and other CI/CD tools becomes the key, as visibility should not be kind of isolated from day-to-day activities and tool stack that is in use. And as we mentioned earlier, the noise filtering becomes a game changer here. The ability to specify failures and to analyze and get to the root cause issues fast, that's the true key. That's the true value that the visibility solution that we're talking about here today is really looking to unlock. Fast feedback, as we say, fail fast and fix fast. This is really the way to turn it into an actionable play.
Great. So before we run to the demo, I just wanted to, really look at the key, some screenshot taken from the product itself. So obviously, as Tzvika mentioned, the reporting within Perfecto gives you from the real execution moment while you are triggering it either from the CI or from your IDE. You are able to see in the live execution dashboard, the live stream, all the different executions coming from different users as an admin or not, and you can see and monitor what's going on in your cloud, in your environment. Next, you have the different test reporting, with actionable insights such as videos, logs, HAR files, accessibility reports, and many more. Next, you have the CI dashboard, all the different jobs and branches that were and builds that you have validated. You can see all the different artifacts, the history of the builds, the length that it took across the different builds, so you can understand whether you have execution issues or bottleneck within your CI, or if you have a broken build that is continuously causing noise and stuff like that. In addition, you have, and Tzvika mentioned, the executive dashboard, the heat map dashboards, and the cross-platform visual validation that allows you to really see and zoom into specific permutations and understand whether you have a real device or browser permutation issues from a visual perspective. Next, you have all the other failure root cause analysis, single test reports, and the full report library with history. And I think we have also touched, the ability to create your own failure reasons on top of the ones that are coming with the Perfecto solution. So with that, Tzvika, let's move to see really the product, the live demo of the reporting solution, and look at each and different feature or functionality.
Sure. So as I've mentioned earlier, the kind of landing angle or the area that is most important for us is, of course, the CI dashboard as the entry level. With that in mind, my CI is something that I kind of cherish, and I always look to be on the evergreen approach, make sure that, majority of my tests are always green, and that any kind of failure that happens is something that indicates immediately that there is an issue for me. So you can see some small red dots that I have here in the last couple of days in some of the executions, which, represent a test that failed. I can, hover on a specific test and see that I have an issue with one of my test cases. So that allows me really to drill down to a list view or report list view that shows me the count of the execution, which platform was running that test. And you can see that really one of the keys in this report is that it's a full digital report. We see tests that are coming both from desktop web executions, mobile device, whether they are real or virtual devices. Everything is being kind of served on a single pane of glass for me as a user. Now, majority of users would say that green is green, so we don't really need to bother. The issues start when things are failing. So I want to understand specifically on that case what happened. And I can see, as we mentioned earlier, Eran, that one of the most common issues is the element or object handling. We can see here in this case where I was looking to get some delivery from the Boston Globe newspaper, that a specific zip code that I was trying to embed or send keys to a specific object that I was looking to identify was not handled properly. The main issue here in this case is an exploit that is being used on a browser test, which is not the most recommended way to handle that. And that is a common thing that we can see in the market. With regards to the tagging mechanism, as you mentioned, we can see different tags, different names from the username to the specific build number, the name of the activity or cycle, the version that we're looking to release, and so on. So this is really key for us in order to define what we want to achieve. Of course, the ability to report immediately a bug in Jira is also key here. And one of the interesting things, as you mentioned, Eran, is really around the slicing and dicing. So if I'll get out of just this specific build, or let's start first with the overall view, what I can do is I can start with the visual validation or the visual comparison of the same test across multiple devices or multiple operating system, if you like. I can see that on the desktop web. I also have different versions of the browser, so I can cross-compare them and create my own visual comparison based on stages in the test, or based on the logical steps of the test, if you like, and cross-compare the screens, the viewports for each and every scenario, just to make sure that, in this case, the responsiveness of the app is something that renders properly across all platforms. Another kind of look at the same stuff, if I'll clear some of the filters and create my own, you can see that, for example, I can define the time frame that is of interest for me. For example, in the last month, I had a significant amount of test cases, 350,000. I can break them or group them by, for example, my favorite is the test name. And then I can do a second level of grouping by, which would be probably device model, which will help me see on which type of platform each and every test cases were executed. For example, if I'll take now just one of the classic cases that I have here, I can see some tests that were running, for example, on a simulator build, and drill down to a specific case where I can see, as we mentioned earlier, Eran, the video that is running on the device, or looking at the screenshots in case that they were taken on specific platforms. I can see that I cannot leave, for example, the password empty, so I need to into my next stage in the test. The access to different artifacts from the full report that I can download as PDF or with specific assertions, the videos, network files, vitals, the device log, and others are pretty popular, among the specific reviews of the test cases. So this is really where you can hone in on a specific problem. The noise filtering is also a very interesting area. I'll start with the tests that are kind of blocked. You can see different reasons for tests that were blocked from being executed. It's either that the device that the user was looking for was not connected. It's either that the app wasn't found in the right repo or the right path. It can be a device that was in use. Different reasons that test wasn't really running properly. I'll just open one example to show that. A specific device was in use while other users were trying to call for that specific device. Even capabilities that are not supported can be filtered out. This entire stack, or this entire amount of test cases, represent a real world use case around where we see customers that are struggling to establish automation that is stable enough, automation that is sustainable, if you like, based on these orchestration problems that are very, very common. So if we can isolate these, if we can put them aside, we can save a significant amount of time every morning when I'm coming back to the office after a nightly build execution, and focus really, as I've mentioned before, only on the things that are red, those that are actually failing. And if we look at failed tests, we can see that we can break down some of the reasons to real world cases, to real things that happens, and there are kind of key in root cause analysis. For example, we mentioned earlier the elements that cannot be found. So you can see per each and every test case whether it's a recurring thing or something that happens once. But the more interesting cases, I would say, are the ones that also involve some kind of, I would say, AI, or the ability to compare some of the viewports, some of the screenshots within the application, and see that in this case, where I was looking for an element on the screen, the issues that was actually blocking my test was a pop-up on the screen. Nothing to do with the functional failure of the application or the script itself. It's just that the screen was blocked by a screenshot. And we train our AI engine with different types of pop-ups, either native application pop-ups, either things that are tied to the device. Very common on the Apple side, you can see trust kind of pop-up notifications or operating system upgrades, many other things that are, part or natural part of the device behavior, but their implication on test automation is pretty clear, and that's something that we allow our customers really to reduce the level of risk. Another one to mention is application crash. Seems very obvious, but I would say that this is in many cases one of the most hard items really to reproduce, especially if you do that on a manual mode. There's nothing that you can actually write home about. In this case, it's really key to identify those and to be able to share with the developers the application crash report, either on iOS or on Android. This is not a trivial thing. We can see on the screen here that the app wasn't really launched, and during an element find command, we actually see the home screen, which is the most convenient way to identify app crash. But there are many cases where the app is being frozen on a specific page and doesn't render properly as it should be. The ability to automatically grab those crash logs under the hood and provide them to a developer as part of that Jira ticket that we can open is the true key, as I've mentioned earlier, to fail fast and fix fast. Another angle would be the heat map that we've mentioned earlier, the ability really to see the different types or devices that this test is running against, and also be able to isolate some of the failures. We can hone in on a specific set of tests that we're running, in this case on an iPhone 11, isolate only those that fail, try, of course, to look for the cases where the element wasn't defined properly, and from here, dismiss only the 25 that we actually, or the 9 out of the 25 that we need to look at to make sure that that we understand what really happened there. We also have the live stream view mode where we can actually review during runtime some of the test case block or just see, the stream of the video for specific activities. And then we can get ready to the next CI execution that we have here, of course, with the ability to break it into specific branches. In this case, we can see the master branch that is critical for us, but there are customers, where we see implementation of dev, staging, pre-prod, production, or master. The different branching activities can be mapped pretty easily here. So with that in mind, again, I want to focus on the interesting component of slicing and dicing my data as a starting point, reviewing the level of risk for each and every platform or for each and every test case, getting the right visibility through my CI visibility, and of course, also the ability to hone in on specific failures, reduce the level of noise, and understanding the actual magnitude or need to focus on high impact problems within my testing. By the order, by the way, that we see them in the market, object handling, which is still the biggest portion of test cases that fail, and then unique cases that are either blocked through test execution, for example, pop-ups that may block my test automation, or in other cases, real application issues such as application crash and other functional or regression issues that may be encountered throughout testing. It's all about reducing the level of noise, increasing the context to the optimum or to the level that meets my role, my responsibility, my position in the organization, and my ability to identify, for example, issues that are related to a specific platform. If I'm running the iOS team or the Android team, aligning that with my CI views, of course, and from that point, reporting or sharing the data across the board with my teammates, with other teams, as a really cross-collaboration tools that provide everyone with the same pane of glass and achieving the fast feedback that we're talking about. Back to you, Eran.
Thank you, Tzvika. This was a great demo, and I think we've touched so many, examples of, what really consists of, or what a test reporting and analysis should consist of. So many pillars, so many fast feedback opportunities to really understand what's going on. But from a Perfecto standpoint, the analysis is very, very important. But at the end of the day, when you're building a continuous testing for DevOps solution, you want to really have an end-to-end unified solution that starts from the creation throughout the execution lab, and then obviously allows you to get all the value from your test cases through the analysis environment. So these are the real pillars for a good continuous testing in DevOps platform. With that, I would like to thank you, Tzvika, for this great webinar. And Shelby, with the time that we have left, are there any key questions that we can address? The rest that we can't, we'll just follow up offline.
Sure, I think we have time for one quick one. It is, from Perfecto's reporting perspective, how can test impact analysis be utilized?
That's a great question, and I think in the early slides I spoke about if you have a good test reporting and analysis platform, obviously you can turn it into a test impact analysis solution. And if you just seen Tzvika's demo showing you 350,000 test cases in a single cloud, you have seen the different pillars, the different layers that consist of this huge amount of test executions. You have seen that there are a bunch of test cases that failed due to environment issues. Few of them crashed. Few of them failed because of pop-up issues, as Tzvika showed you. Okay, you have seen some build through the Jenkins environment that failed due to other reasons. This is exactly what test impact analysis is all about. When you have this amount of data that you can slice and dice, you can make very good and actionable decisions that you can then use and impact the next cycles, the next phases of your software delivery cycle. For example, in the heat map that Tzvika showed you, if you see that there is a recurring pattern of Samsung devices or other devices that typically fail with a security screen, with a security pop-up, or whatever it's in your application, obviously you can take good decisions, but you really need to have this visibility. You need to really have this kind of heat map where you can filter out noise and then deal with that noise. And you have different layers of noise. Some of them are related to CI, some of them are related to visual analysis, some of them are related to functionality, some of them are related to environment and scripting skills, right? We've seen it all in Tzvika's demo and in the other slides. So test impact analysis within Perfecto, it's the test impact analysis is actually the high value, the benefits that you can drive from the reporting throughout making or getting more value out of your entire testing activities. Do we have time for one more question, Shelby?
Yep. So one more question is the reporting and analysis solution supportive of other testing types from external test runs, like API testing?
Yeah. So the reporting and analytics mechanism provided by Perfecto support wide range of testing activities, from the standard functional ones to non-functional test executions, from performance to accessibility to other monitoring use cases, as well as API tests and other test methods that generate textual files or attachments that can also later be uploaded to Perfecto to really serve as a single pane of glass that captures all types of testing in one dashboard, in one view, and creates smart correlations between activities. I think that the API test is very important because it is naturally tied to the functional test automation that runs within Perfecto. It's like the same coin, the other side of the same coin, if you like, and the ability to bring the two into the same view and not keep them as siloed is a unique feature that we provide, and the ability, again, to get an instant feedback while looking at the two.
Great. So with that, we do have more questions, but we don't have enough time. So we'll definitely touch base and get back to all of you with a specific answer to your questions. Tzvika, I would like to thank you for spending the time with us today in this webinar, and thank the entire audience for being with us. And I hope you found this content useful, and we look forward to seeing you in the next webinar.
Thank you very much. Pleasure was all mine.
Thank you.